Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, wherever you're joining me from. It is very good to see you. My name is Mark Dolfini of Strategic Boardroom. You probably know that since you signed up for this session, or maybe you have seen me before, but I see the chat already burning up, and I appreciate you guys getting right to it, letting me know where you're from and what line of work that you're in. That way I can make it more relevant to you because you are here to become more financially literate as a business owner, and I love that. It is an absolute critical skill, and yes, it is absolutely important to know this piece of the puzzle. And so many business owners that I know, they don't really have the understanding that they need to. And sometimes they just know things they don't need to know. Like there's certain aspects of bookkeeping and debits and credits and things like that. And, and that's not what we're going to be talking about today. I want to make sure that you guys are financially literate in the things that are relevant to you as a business owner. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So again, if you're just joining me, please let me know where you're from and what line of work that you're in, or maybe what business that you're in. That way I can kind of make this more relevant to as many of you as I possibly can. Bernadine, we've got, you are in Philly and you're in graphic arts. Fantastic. Very good. Welcome. Kara, you are in Cape Cod, Mass, and you're in retail. Excellent. Welcome. And welcome to you too, Bernadine. I didn't say that. Welcome, Jasmine. And you're in Georgia. You are a mobile notary. I feel like you've been on here before, haven't you, Jasmine? Your name looks familiar. Well, welcome. I'm glad that you could join us. Francisca is in West Virginia as an indoor facility owner. Welcome to you, Francisca. And Yogeshwari. Man, okay. Sorry about that. Welcome from London. It's what is it, 8 o'clock there right now? Excellent. Well, welcome. And we've got Navia from Trinidad Tobago Administrative. Excellent. So we've got people from all over the place in different time zones. So welcome to you. And we've got Azariel. I apologize, guys, if I'm butchering your names. Azariel from Ghana, sustainability advocate and financial literacy tutor for kids. Wow, that's fantastic. Excellent. So for those of you who are joining and you're really learning about financial literacy, this is going to be really important. You're saying yes, APM here, fashion brand, and pre-startup phase. Excellent. So finances is probably very much on your mind right now. Excellent. And for those of you who you might be interested, actually, Yogeshwari, just I think it was yesterday. Gosh, the days are running together. Can you believe it's Friday? I did a session called Business Plans 101, and that is posted to YouTube. So you may want to go there, check on that, because there's some good resources in there that might be helping you out, especially if you're in the startup phase. Doesn't cost you anything. Obviously, it's uploaded to YouTube, so you can utilize those free resources here. So a couple quick things. We are going to get right to it because there's so many different things. We're broadcasting on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we are on YouTube, and we're, of course, you signed up here through EventBrite to be here direct on StreamYard. So it's very good to have you here. Tanya Hairston from Laundromat Owner. Very good. Let me know where you're from, Tanya. So here's the interesting thing. I want to make sure we're going to be covering a lot of information specifically from a top-down perspective. So I'm going to be covering a couple of things in the beginning that don't have a lot to do directly with financial literacy. However, it doesn't really make sense to get directly into the financial literacy piece if you don't have an understanding of the whole picture. So I'm a strategist, and that's what I do as a strategist. And I want to make sure if you were saying, hey, Mark, I want to hire you, for example, what I'm going to do is we're going to go metaphorically into the next room where I have this big table, this big conference table, and that's kind of like my war planning table. That's like, and it's usually full. It's usually full of books. It's full of papers. It's full of big, basically war maps of kind of figuring out, okay, I'm here and I want to get to there. What assets do I have? What tools do I have at my disposal? And that's what a strategist does. So we're going to be taking a top-down approach from looking at that. And I want to say, like, yes, I do employ the tools of coaches, but I'm not a coach. I'm a strategist. And those are two very different things. They look similar from the outside in, but once you start realizing what a strategist really does is that a coach will optimize the performance within a game that's already been decided. A strategist decides the game. Those are two very different things. And I'm not suggesting that one is better than the other. Both are necessary. I employ strategists I've employed strategists and I've employed coaches. And when you have worked with both, you start to see the difference. And yes, I do employ the tools of a coach from time to time, but realistically, at the end of the day, that's how I work as a strategist. So Tanya is from Dallas, Texas. Excellent. Very good. Thank you. You own a laundromat down that way? Okay, excellent. You've got Riverwers. Hello. Welcome. Riverwers, let me know you're joining from YouTube. Let me know where you're from and what line of work that you're in. So we're going to be getting into the nuts and bolts of financial literacy for business owners. So we're going to get right into the agenda because, again, there's so much to cover, and we are going to be taking a top-down approach. So here's what I want you to do. I am going to make this very relevant to the financial piece of your business, but we are going to be taking a top-down approach first and foremost, so you can organize this stuff in a way that's going to make the finances relevant. And you'll understand what I mean here in just a little bit. So first and foremost, we're going to get to, in the agenda, we're going to talk about the Viper framework. And the Viper framework is, and this is going to be very relevant to you who are starting out businesses, or even if you're in an existing business and it's just not running super well. You're going to understand why here in a little bit when we get to the 3 C's of business vision, why your business might not be running well. And maybe it's because you've got difficulty bringing in leads. You're working for people, but they're the wrong customers. They just wear you out. They're not bringing in, these are the type of customers that they just want more and more and more for less and less and less. They certainly aren't advocates for your business. Maybe you have a lot of turnover in your business because you're attracting the wrong employees. You're attracting the wrong subcontractors. And all sorts of different problems like that. So any sort of dysfunctions related to those things are related to one of those 3 C's, sometimes all of those 3 C's in combinations. We're going to talk about that in the Viper framework. Next, we're going to get to the 4 core functions of business, and that has to be true for every single business. So the Viper framework operates within these 4 core functions, and these have to be true for every single business. So we'll get to that. And then we're going to get to the financial statements. So I'm going to be walking you through specifics of balance sheets and income statements. And I want you to understand those things. I'm not going to tell you more than you need to know. And I know some of you are like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not a numbers person." Go ahead and put it in there. What business, like for example, where do you feel, are you a numbers person? Or are you not a numbers person? Specifically, what do you talk like? Do you feel like you are a numbers person or not a numbers person? Go ahead and put that in the chat. And if you feel like you're a numbers person, great, you're going to do well with this. If you're not a numbers person, you're still going to do well with this. You know why? Because accounting isn't about numbers. It's about rules. And if you understand the rules of solitaire, if you understand the rules of Candyland, if you understand the rules of checkers, you can understand the rules of bookkeeping and accounting. Does that make sense? So Bernadine is saying 50-50. Okay, that's great. And listen, that's great. So the other 50 is just understanding rules. So you don't have to be a numbers person. All it is just the numbers are just how it's communicated. So if you look down at your gas gauge and it says 1/2, those are numbers, right? Or if it says 5/10, you go, "Oh, my gas is half full." That's what I'm saying. That's all this is the numbers on your balance sheet and the numbers on your income statement. Those are just representations of what has occurred. And that's all it is. You just need to understand the rules. So someone's going to teach you the rules, and that's what this is all about. So Kara is saying, "I like numbers." Excellent. Let's see. So Riverword's saying, "I kind of understand what you're saying." Okay, excellent. What business are you talking about? Whatever business that you're in. So if you're in a business specifically, or you have a business idea and understanding the finances, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So whatever business that you have, let me know. Bacon Blocks, hello, welcome. I like that picture in the back. I'm trying to figure out what that is. It looks like a cool building. All right, excellent. So let's get to the rest of the agenda. So we're going to be talking about financial statements specifically, and then we're going to be talking about a concept called growing broke. And there's lots of ways companies can grow, but also go broke at the same time. And I'm going to show you one of those critical ways in the agenda today. And of course, we're going to talk about some resources. So let me just let you know, okay, right here, these are all the books that I have written in the past. And the first 3 books that I had were were real estate related books. So The Time Wealthy Investor. Then I wrote a smaller book called The Judge, which was just kind of a short story. And then I wrote another book called The Time Wealthy Investor 2.0. Those 3 books are related to real estate specifically, and that was the avatar that I really liked working with. Then I decided around 2019, 2020, I was going to niche up a little bit and start working as a strategist for business owners. I was working as a strategist for real estate investors, but I really wanted to work more with different types of operators. So I was working, and that's when I published last year. I published The Time Wealthy Advantage, which is that blue book, and I'll show you that here in a second. That's the book over my shoulder here. And then there's 4 other books that I published last year. So I published 5 books last year. I'm not here to sell the books. I'm not here to promote anything. This book here is the book that I wrote the last. If you live outside the US and you'd like to get a copy, the best bet is to get it on Amazon. That's going to be the fastest way for you to get it. Unfortunately, I don't do fulfillment outside the United States for this book, but if you want to get a copy, it's available on Amazon. If you're inside the US, however, and you would like to get a copy of the book, you can get it from strategicboardroom.com. So I just want to let you know what that is. So we've got Eduardo is from Houston, Texas, residential remodeling and maintenance. Excellent. Well, welcome. So this is, give me 1 second. I just realized I don't have something up here. So today's session, which I meant to put that up here. So what I want to hear from you guys right now is, okay, there we go. All right, sorry about that. I had that up and then it popped off for some reason. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about in terms of this book here, and this book, I'm not, like I said, I'm not here to promote the book. I'm just letting you know everything I'm going to be talking about around the Viper framework is in that book. So if you're looking to get a deep dive, or, you know, if you're a reader, or that's something, or if you're on Audible, if you can buy it on Audible if you want. But everything I'm going to be talking about is about the Viper framework. And the Viper framework is that top-down approach that I was telling you about early on. If you're in business for yourself and you're trying to construct or find a framework that will allow you to approach your business strategically, this is the framework that will work for you. And I'm telling you, this works for businesses of all sizes. It especially works for small business operators, owner-operators. If you're a solopreneur, if you're a business owner, I mean, this has worked up to, so far, businesses with as many as 55 employees. And I don't see really any reason that it couldn't work for businesses much larger. So let's take a look and unpack the Viper framework. The Viper framework is an acronym for vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. And this is that top-down approach, and everything is going to start and land with vision. Vision is made up of 2 components. Vision is made up of personal vision and business vision. So let's look at personal vision first. Personal vision is, where do you want to go? It's going to ask the primary question, where do you want to go? So you might be thinking, so Eduardo, where do you want to go in your life? Kara, where do you want to go in your life? Riverwords, where do you want to go? We've got someone joining us from Nigeria, Titi from Nigeria. What do you want your life to look like? Where do you want to go in life? That's the personal vision question. And you might be thinking, well, what does this have to do with financial literacy? It has everything to do with financial literacy, because everybody's been focusing so much on the money piece, but they never figure out what the money piece is supposed to do for them. This is the definition I want you to come up with in advance, because the problem is that many people only focus on the business vision component, which is the next component. And the business vision is going to say, cool, how are we going to get there? But the problem is, many people, many business owners specifically, they only focus on the business vision. And the danger in focusing on the business vision without ever creating a personal vision is that you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. And I'm just telling you, that sucks. That's an empty well that never gets filled in. It's interesting that I have sat in, hello, Karina, good to have you here. Let me know where you're from and what line of work that you're in, please, so we can kind of make this relevant to you. So here's the thing. I have sat in masterminds and strategy sessions and seminars and all these different types of events with people sitting next to people who I knew and knew well, who were making legit 6 and 7 figures a month, like take home. Meanwhile, their life is burning down around them. Their home life is a disaster. They don't have the relationship that they want with their loved ones. And you know what they were more worried about? They were more worried about making more money and getting that extra comma in the bank account. That's what I'm telling you I'm hoping for you to avoid, because they were hiding in work. They were hiding in their businesses because they didn't want to do the hard work of actually creating a personal vision for what they wanted their marriage to look like, or what they wanted their relationship with their loved ones to look like, what they wanted their relationship with their friends or children, or even their relationship with food or relationship with faith. Those are the sorts of things that you really want to start thinking about in advance so that the business vision can deliver that for you. Okay? So yes, I'm just saying right now, this is the important thing that I want you to think about now. And again, I wished I had someone like me telling me this when I was in my mid 20s. I'm in my early 50s now. I'm 53. And yes, it took me a while to figure this out, way longer than it should have. And the fact that you're here, now you get to hear me say it. Now, we're not going to spend the whole time on personal vision. That would be misleading, because we are going to talk about financial literacy. But the point is, the financials are going to be delivering that life for us. And if you don't define that, all you're going to do is just going to keep doing more. That's going to be the default setting is, well, I just want more. More of what? More money to be more miserable? And that's what I'm trying to avoid for you. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take and be really clear about what your personal vision is. Karina is saying, live in Tallahassee, Florida. Welcome. Oh, excellent. Love Tallahassee. Building capital to buy a business franchise. Fantastic. Fantastic. And I don't have any direction yet. Okay, well, perfect. You're going to pick some of that up right now. So here's what I want you to do. Just in the context of personal vision, we'll be done with personal vision, then we'll put the fries in the bag, we'll be done with this. But in the context of personal vision, I want you to think about let's pretend that you're turning 100 years old, and you have this 100th birthday speech that you're going to say to the people in the room. Well, first of all, who would you want to be there? Who would you want to be in the room? And what would you say to them? What would be the things that you would specifically say to these people at your 100th birthday speech, right? And those two things right there are going to be really important, just so you can start to think of what would you say, or what would you want the message to be when what would you want the message that people would carry outside the room when you were done speaking? That's what I want you to think about. And now some of you might be thinking, well, come on, Mark, and again, I get it. You might be thinking that, man, that's too hard for me to think of. I'm in my mid 20s. I can't think of when I'm turning 100. Fine. I respect that. That's something called future self discontinuity. Future self discontinuity. That means that you have a hard time picturing your future self. You almost see yourself as a stranger, right? And brain scans, when sometimes people, they have a good view of themselves, who their future self will be, and sometimes they have a very disconnected of who their future self will be. But either way, maybe make it a little bit shorter term. Say, okay, well, what's the next major milestone for you? Maybe you're going to be turning 30 years old. Maybe it's your next high school reunion. Maybe it's when your kids graduate from high school, whatever. So start thinking of what that next milestone might be if the 100th birthday speech is a little bit too far away. Make sense? So please promise me that you're going to do that, because from this point forward in this seminar, we are going to be talking about about business stuff. So again, doesn't absolve you of that. We're just got to move on from that. So make sure you're doing the work. Okay. So Bernadine is saying you're making sense, Mark. Excellent. And I'm dead serious about this. I know I kid around a lot, but this is something that is just way too serious, because I see way too many people spending way too many hours, days, and minutes worrying about things about their business, when realistically they're not. They should be worried about other things going on in their life. It's usually when we start thinking about these things, standing over a hospital bed, or worse, standing over a casket. So really, I'm not trying to make it too heavy, but I just want you to be really serious about what you want your personal vision to look like. All right, so let's move on from there. So now let's talk about the 3 C's of business vision. And the 3 C's of business vision, every time I have been invited in to work with a company, or working with a small business owner, and they want me to work with them, there's almost always holes in one of these 3 C's. I mean, it hasn't happened yet where there hasn't been a hole in these. And I'm just letting you know, these 3 C's are the things, this is the DNA of your company. So let's unpack those. That's your core purpose, your core values, and your client avatar. Core purpose, core values, client avatar. Those are the 3 C's of business vision. Let's talk about core purpose. Core purpose is specifically, what business are you in, And what problems do you specifically solve? And it's really important that you be specific in your answers. So again, if this thing is about making money for you, about being financially literate, a lot of times I see businesses that really struggle in their finances because they are so fragmented in terms of their core offerings. Now, I want you to think about this like, well, I do a lot of things. Okay, fine. Maybe you do a lot of things, but you can't be so fragmented that you serve too many different customers. That's where people get into trouble. We'll talk about client avatar here in a second, but think of core purpose. Think of what a mechanic does. If you have a local mechanic that works on your passenger vehicle, did they offer a lot of things? Sure they do. Sure they do. Could they replace wiper blades for you? Sure they could. Could they replace blinker bulbs? Absolutely. Could they put new tires on your car? Well, probably most of them can. Could they put new brakes, new mufflers? Could they put new belts? Could they do a tune-up? Yeah, sure, they can do a lot of those things. Would they would they replace a transmission? Maybe not. That takes more of a specialty, right? So you see what that line of demarcation is? That's what is important to the core purpose. But they serve a singular purpose around passenger vehicles. Will they work on a school bus? Probably not, because it's a different drivetrain. It's a different type of engine. It's different. You see what I'm saying? So they have that line in the sand where their core purpose is, but they're willing to say no to lots of other things that are really nothing more than distractions. That's why it's important to have your core purpose defined. Be specific about what you are and be a little obnoxious about what you're not, right? Does Starbucks sell cheeseburgers? No, because it doesn't align with their core purpose. And in fact, I give the CEO of Starbucks a lot of credit because what they said is, hey, we're getting rid of a lot of the menu items because we're getting too far away from what we were supposed to be, and that's a coffee house, right? Like all these sandwiches and all this other stuff that we're doing, that's what we're going to get away from some of that. I give that CEO a lot of credit. Now, I don't know how well it was received, but that was part of that mission, about being deliberate in that core purpose. So that is core purpose. And you have to be really specific about what you are and almost a little obnoxious about what you're not. Again, if you say that you're a realtor and you are, right? Like Karina said that she's going to buy a business franchise. Okay. Don't know what that is. And maybe she's not 100% sure just yet, but what specific purpose is that franchise that she's going to purchase? What business are they in and what business are they not in? And be really polarizing about what they're not. So that's core purpose. Let's talk about core values. Core values is what matters to you about this business and how would the world be worse off if you went out of business. That's what is representative of your core values. Now think about this. Your business is just an extension of you. Your business is just an extension of you. So when you're thinking about this, you're like, okay, my business is an extension of me. So therefore, because you have a set of core values that you operate within your life, would it make sense to set up a business that has a very different set of core values? No, because you'll end up going to a place that you hate working. Have you ever worked for a place that doesn't align with your core values? I'll save you some grief. It sucks. In case you haven't done it, don't do it. I have worked at a couple of different places that did not align with my core values, and I couldn't wait to get home. I couldn't, and I had that creeping dread on Sunday afternoon. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to go back to that place tomorrow. Has anybody had one of those jobs? Let me know in the chat. You don't have to tell me where it was. But if you were working for a boss or working for a manager whose core values didn't align with yours, yeah, that's awful. Right? Yeah. Yeah, Kara saying several. Yeah, it's horrendous. It's not fun. Yeah, Karina, obviously you've been there, right? And I can agree. Absolutely, Karina. Yeah, it's a horrible experience when that has happened. And that's what you're trying to do. So here's where I want you to think, and this is how you start to establish what your core values are. When you're thinking about your core values, I want you to think of a time where you had a friend where they were heading down a path that you weren't willing to follow them. They were heading down a path that you just couldn't follow. They were kind of wandering off the reservation. And you're like, dude, where are you going? You're heading down a path I can't follow. I'm not willing to remain your friend if this is what you're going to do. Has that ever happened? Sometimes it happens to a friend. Sometimes it happens with someone what we're romantically involved with. Sometimes it happens with family members. And when that happens, it's heartbreaking and it sucks. but that's how you know that there was a violation of a core value for you. So what's a value? A value is something that you obviously you place value, you have value in, right? Like I value peanut M&Ms, right? Am I willing to go to war over peanut M&Ms? No. Someone breaks in my house and says, "Give me your peanut M&Ms." I'm like, "Okay, cool, take them," right? Someone breaks in my house and tries to harm my family. It's gonna be an ugly day for them, right? Because that is a violation of a core value for me. So really, the line in the sand is, when does a value become a core value? When you're willing to get up off the couch and act. When you're willing to take action on something, that's how you know something's a core value. So take the time to define those extremes in your life. Like, I'm never going to be like that boss. Okay, well, what did that boss do? Well, he did this. Okay, well, what was the violation of the core value? Oh, okay. Right now you can start thinking, oh, they said one thing and did another. Okay, that sounds like integrity to me. That's important to you. Think of the other things, like maybe you had a wonderful boss or a wonderful relationship or a wonderful experience. And you could say, well, what was it? What was the core value representative there? And maybe you can start to replicate that in your core values. So start to take the time and really get clear on the core values. And here's why. Because the core values is what determines company culture. And company culture and company brand have an inextricable link. And that's the thing. The company culture is what's experienced by the people inside your organization. The company brand is what's experienced by people outside the organization. That's why they share that core link. And the common thread for both of those is your core values. Make sense? So if you want to be massively profitable in your business, or if you want to build a business that you maybe at some point want to sell, company culture is what people will buy because they have really hard time replicating that. So let's get into that. So we talked about core purpose. We talked about core values. Now let's talk about client avatar. And this is, again, going to be very important for the financial literacy piece because, again, you want to attract the people that you really like to work with, specifically and ideally that you like to work with. And these are the people that are going to bring so much joy when they come around, and they're going to want to spend a lot of money. They're not going to be bringing a lot of grief and drama. And these people are important. It's important that you identify these people through their geographics, their demographics, and their psychographics. So I don't really talk about this now, but I do talk about this in the course. And I didn't mention, I do have an offering at the end. I'm just going to mention this now. So I didn't mention it earlier on, but this is the one thing I just want to mention. I do have an offering at the end that does cost a little bit of money. It's not like thousands, so don't get worried about that. But I just want to let you know that I do have an offering. So if I reference the course, it's not because I'm trying to be weird about it. It's just there's just too much information for me to mention and try to get into it all now. But I'll mention at the end. I'll let you know when going to be talking about the course at the end. So if you're not interested, you can hop off and you don't have to listen to me blather on about it. Sound fair? Okay. So I just want to make sure that you knew that going on. So it's just because I had done this a couple of times. People were like, "Man, do you have more?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do. I actually have a course." Like, "Well, why didn't you mention it?" Like, so I just want to mention this now, in case, again, I'll let you know when it is so you guys can hop off if you're not interested. So anyway, so when you're starting to think about their client avatar, I want you to think about their geographics, their demographics, and their psychographics. And part of that reason is because in the financial literacy, you're going to be tracking things called CAC, things like RMI. CAC is client acquisition cost. RMI is return on marketing investment. Like, these are the sorts of things that if I'm sending out money, I want to know that the money is bringing back more money. Make sense? So if you're targeting the wrong avatar, or you're just kind of throwing money out there, just going, well, I'll just do a little bit of branding. Okay, great. No. Branding is a massive waste of money for most small businesses, and most small businesses cannot afford to do branding effectively. And by the way, why would you want to? Because it's hard to track when you're just throwing a name up on a billboard and it's like, oh, okay, are they responding because of the billboard, or are they responding because of some other reason? It's so I get into that in terms of marketing magic. That's a different webinar, but I'm just saying, when you're looking at your client avatar, it's important that you define them through your geographics, their demographics, and their psychographics. Their geographics is specifically where they are. That's pretty straightforward. Where do they live? Where do they work? Where are they specifically? What part of the world do they occupy? Are they in Ghana? Are they in are they in London? Are they in the Midwest of the United States? Are they, where are they? Right? So are they in Trinidad? Like, where are they? So these are the sorts of things that you have to think about. In the demographics is who they are, who are these people in the demographics? Are they married? Are they single? Are they rich? Are they poor? Are they divorced? Are they do they have kids? Do they have no kids? Right? Whatever. So these are the sorts of things that I want you to think about in terms of their demographics. The last one is their psychographics, and that's how they think and how they buy. How they think and how they buy. And I want you to think of the phrase ALIA, A-L-I-A. That's their attitudes, their lifestyles, their interests, and their aspirations and goals. If you know someone's attitudes on things, their attitudes on education, their attitudes on the government, their attitudes on politics, their attitudes on various things, what's their attitude on life? Think about that. Would it be helpful for you to market to them if you knew their attitudes? Would it be helpful for you if you understood their lifestyle? Are they young and jet setting and flying all over the world? Or are they young and they just kind of like to hang out at home? Are they homebodies? Are they older and they like to spend time with their grandkids? Or are they, are they married and have teenagers and they're running around, running kids all over to soccer games all the time? Right? Think of their lifestyle. Think of their interests. Are they interested in reading? Are they interested in knitting? Are they interested in music? Are they interested in NASCAR or Formula One, American football, or European soccer, European football? Like, what is it that they're interested in? Again, if you understand their interests, it's going to be much easier and much more effective to your marketing dollars. That's a critical component to understanding financial literacy. So, and then the last piece is their aspirations and goals. What are their goals? So if you understand their goals, again, it's going to be much more effective for you to reach them with their marketing dollars. So that is the 3 C's of business vision: core purpose, core values, and client avatar. And that is the personal vision and business vision. Okay. So we're going to put the fries in the bag on vision. Okay. So chances are you've got a little bit of work to do, probably around core purpose, core values, or client avatar. You probably have to spend a little bit of time working on those. Let me know. Like Karina had just said, I just had to let a friend go because of that last month. You're probably talking about a violation of a core value. And I'm sorry for that, Karina. It sucks. And it's just part of growing up and being an adult. And it's just hard. But unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. So you're saying, Kara, why IMT? Not sure. So, okay. Bernadette Dean saying yes. Okay. Sorry. I think I've got everybody there. All right. So now let's talk. We talk about vision. Let's talk about infrastructure. The infrastructure is the bones of the business. It's the desks. It's the chairs. It's the software, computer software, and things like that, and websites. And this is what you're going to be spending money on from the business. And it's important that you think about the purchases that you're going to be making, the investments you're going to be making in infrastructure in advance of needing them, right? Don't just be out buying stuff for the sake of buying stuff, because that's a fantastic way to go broke. So the other thing is, when it comes to infrastructure, it's the desks, the chairs, the software, it's the things like that. It's a very important part of your business. And you might be thinking, okay, well, it's a very, very important part of my business. Like when you're looking at vision and infrastructure, well, after infrastructure, you also have process. And process is simply how you do stuff. Process, you're looking at 2 components of process, which is tactical and strategic. The tactical part of process is how you do things from a day-to-day perspective. It's your standard operating procedures, your checklist items, day-to-day activities, right? That's pretty much how that's the tactical thing that you do. From a strategic perspective, it's about strategic planning, where you're needing to think about the people you're trying to reach and the people you're going to need in your organization. It's about the purpose of the strategic plan, which should be in alignment with what, by the way? The strategic purpose should be in alignment with the core purpose. The people you're trying to attract should be in alignment with your core values and your client avatar, right? And the last component is, of course, promotion. And promotion is just communication, but it's doing it a lot. So again, promotion might be outwardly promoting, but it also is inwardly promoting. So you have to have this conversation quite a bit. I can't get into the weeds on this right now, but just because this is just really meant to be a primer for you to understand how this all works. But start thinking about things that you need to work on a day-to-day perspective and also from a strategic perspective. Because otherwise, if you don't think strategically, all you're doing basically in effect is you have built this boat and you've moored it to the harbor, and you're just letting it get battered around by whatever economic winds happen to be blowing across the bay at that point in time. That's why you need to be strategic. That's when you're saying, okay, cool. I've got my system in place. I've got my infrastructure and my tactical process in place. But now let's be strategic. Now let's go out and make some trouble. Let's go out into the world. Let's go across, get out of the bay and into open waters, and let's make some trouble. That's what being strategic is, not just taking it as it comes. Make sense? The next component in the Viper framework is execution. Execution, this is one of my favorite quotes by General Patton: a good plan violently executed now is better than the perfect plan executed next week. And a lot of times business owners, especially those who kind of get caught in that perfectionist trap, is that, no, it's got to be perfect before I execute it. Well, a lot of times perfection becomes the enemy of done. So you have to move forward. And if the plan is good enough, it's good enough. You just move forward, because chances are the plan's going to change anyway. And this is the reason why I have execution within, it's got its own line item in the Viper framework, because most plans fall apart in execution. And the reason for that is because many business owners, in fact, too many business owners, have way too many priorities. Where are my business owners out there that have 37 things to do on their to-do list today? Right? I know who you are. Again, if I had 3 hands, I'd put them all up, because that was me for a really long period of time. And I want you to understand that's what it is, right? That's what you have to do. You have to recognize that because you have all these priorities, what happens is having too many priorities has the same impact as having no priorities. That's why I like to break things down into a daily 5. A daily 5, what that is up to 5 highly specific actions that you can take, which are going to move the needle towards your vision or your strategic plan. One of the two. Personally, I like 3 things. If I'm up to 5, I'm telling you, I'm running hot. But if I have 3 things that I know that are going to be needle moving activities for that day, for example, this for me is a needle moving activity. I get in a lot of people who in my atmosphere who kind of get to know me a little bit. I get to train them. And maybe someday I get to work with them, maybe not. But if nothing else, I've left them in a better state. So this for me is absolutely winds my clock. I love to teach, and I absolutely love to do this. And when people come across my radar and I've left them in a better state, that's exactly the sort of thing, like I said, that winds my clock. So that is execution. So the last piece of this is reporting. Let's get to a couple of things. Carissa had said I had to let a friend go, and Bernadine had responded back: as we mature, we learn it's okay to let people go. Yeah, and I know, and it's also about gaining that emotional intelligence when you realize that when you have a personal vision, and all of a sudden people start acting outside that personal vision, you kind of go, man, I that's just not a direction I want to go in, right? Like that's who I was when I was 20, but that's not who I am now. So who we were isn't who we are. Bernadine says, I thought I had strategy in my first business, but didn't. I understand. And Yogeshwari, me, so true. So many priorities. Exactly. Yeah, thank you. It's it is a lot. Azariel is saying exactly, EI is crucial. Emotional intelligence is crucial. Absolutely right. Yeah, and it is important, especially as you're bringing other people into your organization and you start recognizing that there's just certain fights that just aren't worth having. I used to be that guy on social media that would be, typing out all these big things and hitting enter and feeling like I finally got my satisfaction. There was no way they were going to walk out of that argument, and they just ghosted me, right? Because they weren't interested in actually bettering themselves. They were just interested in arguing. And that's why now I don't even really engage in that sort of stuff. In fact, a lot of times I type something out and I go, delete. I don't even post it. It's not worth it, right? People are just more interested in just getting your ire up than they are about anything else. So that last piece here is about execution. And by the way, it's also not in my vision to spend hours on my social media arguing with people that don't have any impact in my life. So when I'm looking at vision, infrastructure, process, execution, now the last piece is reporting. Reporting is very critical. And reporting is where you're going to be looking at two components to reporting. And that is lead metrics and the lag metrics. Lead metrics are what precede the lag metrics. That's why they're called the lead metrics. And they're just based on your actions and activities. That's it. What actions and activities did you take? And guess where they come from? Your daily 5. Those should be your daily 5 activities. Those are your lead metrics. Your lag metrics are just simply the results of those actions and activities. So if you're not getting the results you want, what do you have to adjust? That's right. You just have to adjust the actions and activities. It's straightforward. Either do more of them or pivot a little bit, adjust them, or stop doing them altogether. There's really not much. There's not much else to look at. So that's when you're looking at from when it comes to the reporting function. And the reporting function has a big function in the financial literacy piece, right? Which we'll talk about that here in a little bit when we're looking at metrics. But these are all the things that you're going to be looking at. So that's the framework, okay? So that's the framework. Now we're going to start, now that you've got kind of a base to work from, now let's talk about the 4 core functions. The 4 core functions of business are lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. And your customer's journey through your business happens in that order. First, they experience the lead generation, then they experience the sales component, then they experience the operations and fulfillment component, and then, of course, there's the accounting, where you get paid and the bills get paid. Make sense? So when it comes to the 4 core functions, lead generation, everything needs to support your lead generation function. Most people think it needs to support the operational function, which it does to a certain degree. But without lead generation, you are dead in the water. You have that boat and you've got no fuel. Or basically you're just rowing, right? Try rowing that big battleship, right? And you're not going anywhere. You're not going very far. So this is what I'm saying, like everything needs to support that lead generation function. Otherwise you are dead in the water. Because here's the truth. You can have the best, most efficient business. You can be an absolute paragon of truth, justice, and virtue. And your sales technique's so dialed in, you could sell ice to Eskimos or voting booths to Castro, and you can still starve. So you can never, ever, ever take your foot off the gas when it comes to lead generation. You just can't. That's why, even though we're talking about financial literacy, it's important that you recognize that your actions and your activities and your money needs to be supporting that lead generation function. Because too often people don't think about that. They're like, hey, we're doing well. We've got more leads than we got coming in. Okay, either raise your prices or find a way to be more economical in attracting the people that are really bringing the most amount of money, or split things off. But you cannot rely just because, oh, we've got more work than we got coming in. Okay, listen, then probably you need to raise your prices. That's what it sounds like to me. And most people go, no, I can't do that. Like, okay, why not? Because if you've got more work than you can handle, that seems like you've got a volume issue. So I'm just saying, this is where you cannot take your foot off the gas when it comes to lead gen. When it comes to sales, look, the selling function is just continuing the conversation that started by the lead generation function. And again, the financial piece needs to be supportive of the sales function. If they need something, and you have to be willing to spend some money. And here's the thing, and we talked about this in terms of priorities before. When I hear about this, and I see this with managers, I see this with bosses, and I see this with ineffective leaders, when they come in and they start telling their staff that, oh, this is a priority, right? And things change every like 3 minutes in the organization, especially with small businesses. And if you're the boss, you have to be careful not to do this. That if you're trying to establish something as a priority, you can't tell me it's a priority unless you're willing to attach a resource to it. What do I mean by resources? Time, money, or people. If you're not willing to attach a resource to that thing, then don't tell me it's a priority. Does that make sense? So this is why I'm saying, like, if sales or lead generation becomes a priority, fine. Show me the money, show me the time, show me the people that you're going to help me do this with. The same thing with sales. Don't tell me that sales is a priority and you're not going to be spending time developing these salespeople to sell for you. Don't tell me that that's important to you if you're not willing to establish, training, if you're willing to establish bonuses, if you're willing to establish additional people that you're going to be hiring in to help hold them accountable. That's the sort of thing that I'm talking about. So Bernadine is saying, yes, it makes sense. Very good. Thank you. So these are the sorts of things that's important. Thank you, Bernadine. So the next piece of this, the other thing I just want to make this quick point is you have to understand that effective selling is really about finding solutions, not holding people's heads underwater until they say yes. That's not selling. That's just being a bully. It's about finding solutions. It's about talking to them. It's about having conversation with them. And if your product or service doesn't solve the problem, okay, maybe help them find a solution, but leave them better than how you found them. That's your responsibility as a salesperson, at minimum. As a boss, it is absolutely your responsibility to your community. For the operational function, if you're going to get stuck, this is generally where people get stuck, and they get stuck in the operational function, like building the websites, building, putting on the roofs, doing the massages, whatever it is. If they're going to get stuck, this is generally where they're going to get stuck. If they're going to ignore something, generally they're going to ignore the accounting. Now, it generally goes something like this. Well, I've got more money in my bank account this month than last month. I must be doing okay. Right? Well, how many times have I said those very words and I've got a degree in accounting. Like my bachelor's degree is in accounting, and I have said those very words. Well, I got more money in my bank account this month than last month. I must be doing okay. And that's no bueno. That's not going to work. So I just want you to understand that when you're looking at this in terms of the 4 core functions, again, the accounting function, you cannot ignore it. And because the accounting function is, again, it's one of the main pieces of the puzzle. The accounting function collects the money. The accounting function pays the bills. The accounting function tracks and measures everything that happened. Reporting, right? Remember? And the reporting function in the Viper method, the accounting function also forecasts, it budgets, and it plans for what will happen. It's like you're driving a speedboat in the fog and just hoping that you're not going to run aground. That's the thing that you have to recognize why the accounting function is so important. Now, let me ask you something. Are all these things the same skill set? Are all these things the same skills? No, they're not the same skills. This is why business owners struggle, because they've got lead generation issues, then they're trying to sell, then they're trying to do the operation fulfillment, and that is one of the main reasons why the accounting function gets ignored. So, if you are going to hire someone, if you are going to bring someone into your organization, what do you think you'd want to reference? You'd want to reference your core values. Make sure that if you're going to be hiring someone in to do your books or pay the bills or do the bank reconciliations, these are the sorts of things that you're going to be hiring people that are in alignment with your core values. That's why it was foundational. That's why I taught you that 20 minutes ago. And again, take that time, because you can't do it all. If you're a solopreneur, you're not going to be able to do it all. And this is the thing. Many business owners that come to me, they are very smart. And they have a really good work ethic. Their problem is that they're really smart and they have a really good work ethic. Yes, their very strengths are also their very problems, because they think that every problem that comes across their desk is for them to solve. And because they're really smart and they have a good work ethic, they'll work on that problem for like 20 straight hours until they figure it out. And that's a job some of these problems are well below their pay grade. That's why they're struggling financially. Does that make sense? So, you got Eduardo saying literally me. I'm not here to indict you, my brother, I promise. So let's see here. Yogeshwari is saying all these core functions are almost parallel, right? They do run. Yes, they are parallel, but they do run in order. Okay, so once they're up and running, the customer's journey happens in that order, but they do run parallel. And when you're thinking about that, when you're thinking of the Viper framework, you do want to employ the Viper framework in each 4 of those functions. Think of, okay, what vision do I have? What's the vision I'm trying to take this organization in, and how does that lead generation function align with that vision, right? And what's infrastructure do I need for my lead generation function? What's the processes that I need for my lead generation function, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Make sense? And you do that for each of the 4 functions. So let's keep rolling. It is August 2nd, Bernadine. It is said you should work on your business, not in your business. Now I get it. Listen, it's okay to work in your business. Right now I'm working in my business, right? I'm not working on my business. I enjoy this. I absolutely love to teach. I love doing what I do. And even though, I have people that pay me that come on these calls, and I have people that don't pay me that come on these calls. And that's totally fine. But the thing is, it's not that you should never work in your business. I enjoy this. I get lots of other money from my real estate business that enables me to do this. Because my real estate business is successful and is doing that, I'm not working in that business anymore, because that business runs on its own. I have people that run that business for me. So what I'm saying is, Yes, this is absolutely true, and that's something that was made popular by Michael Gerber, who wrote the E-Myth, and very popular book back in the 70s and 80s. But the thing is, that whole concept of working on your business versus working in your business, these are the sorts of things you have to think about because, again, you're only constrained, but you're one person. You can only do so many things at a time. You can't do lead generation while you're also doing the operations and fulfillment and doing all this stuff. You're too fragmented. You're just not going to be effective. You're like the drunk guy at the party that thinks all their jokes are funny. You know what I mean? So this is what I'm talking about. You have to take that time to hire and bring in other people so everybody can be doing multiple things at a time. And that's you stepping into your leadership. But again, that's a whole different session. So let's talk about the financial statements. So we're going to get into the financial statements and the financial statements in the specifically around your balance sheets and your income statements or your P&Ls. All right. So Karina's saying, yep, you get that. No one wants to make eye contact with the drunk guy at the party. Don't look at him. Don't make eye contact. As they're sipping from their red Solo cup. Okay. So a couple things I want to talk about balance sheet and income statement. Balance sheet is just something, is a snapshot in time. It's one moment in time that's going to measure certain things. The income statement measures different things over a period of time. So the balance sheet measures balances in your accounts, okay? The balances are the valuations of those line items. And the income statement is also going to measure things, but it's going to measure them over time, okay? So I'm going to get to what this actually means here right now. So when you're looking at your balance sheet, again, the balance sheet is taken, it's a snapshot in time, and it's going to measure a couple of things. Three main categories in a balance sheet. Remember, these are the rules that you're going to operate within the balance sheet. Your balance sheet is measured in assets, what you own. The assets are what you own. The liabilities are what is owed to others. And the equity is what it's worth on paper. If you were to sell all your assets, pay off all your liabilities, conceivably this is what would be left in your equity. That would be what was left. Okay? So just think of it that way. So the assets is what you own, like you have title to, right? Could be a bank account, could be a vehicle, could be a piece of property, something like that. The liabilities is the balances of what you owe to others, right? And then the equity is what's left over. So the income statement, on the other hand, is what's over a period of time. Now you see that it says income statement / P&L. The income statement, the profit and loss, or the P&L, has anybody ever heard those phrases? Guess what? They're all the same exact thing. So if someone says, oh, I'm looking at my P&L, or hey, I'm looking at my profit and loss, or hey, I'm looking at my income statement, they're all the same thing. They're all the same thing. So I don't want you getting hung up. I'm an accounting purist, so I use income statement, but every now and again I might use the phrase P&L. I don't really use the phrase profit and loss too often, but again, they are all the same thing. Okay, so I'm just letting you know it's a vernacular difference. It is not a structural difference. So when you're looking at these three things, and this is broken down into three areas, they are broken down into revenues, which is your sales, your gross sales. So if you sell something for $100,000, that's $100,000 in sales. What you pay out during that period of time is your expenses. So let's say that you paid $70,000 to make that $100,000 thing, right? So let's say you built some sort of widget that you could sell for $100,000. Let's say you build a house and you could sell it for $100,000, and the expenses to build that house were $70,000. Okay, what's left over is your net income or profit. Okay, so you have $100,000 in sales, $70,000 in expenses and payments over that same period of time, and then you have a net income of $30,000, right? So that's how that works. Now, I'm going to give you some specific examples of what this looks like. So, some of you, and again, if I had not mentioned, I thought I mentioned it earlier, but if you have signed up for this on EventBrite, you will be getting a replay. I know some of you have to hop off at the top of the hour, so I just want to let you know if you do have to hop off, you will be getting the replay sent to your email inbox. If you're joining me on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, you will see the replay in YouTube. So I just want to let you know that's where that's going to be. Okay, so the balance sheet, you're going to see this balance sheet here, and this is excerpted from the Time Wealthy Advantage on page 265. So if you have that book handy, you can look at it there, or you can just look at the screen. So what I'm showing here is just a very simple sample balance sheet. You'll see the assets at the top, you see the liabilities in the middle, and towards the bottom, and then at the very bottom you have the equity. Remember, assets minus liabilities equals your equity. So let's look at the top. We're going to look at the top section, which is your assets. Again, remember, this is what you own. This is what you own. So you have cash in the very top. And again, generally these are going to be listed in order of liquidity, meaning what is the most liquid and easily convertible to cash. So from the most liquid to the least liquid, you have your cash in a checking account, which is $10,350 or 10,350 pounds or whatever unit of measure in your country. This follows what's called GAAP, GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. So it doesn't matter what the unit of measure is, what the monetary value is. They're all basically going to be the same. So you have your cash balance in your checking account. Let's say, again, you take that snapshot at the end of the month. You closed out your books. There's not going to be any additional changes. Your cash balance at the end of the month is $10,350. Your accounts receivable is what is owed to you as a company. So let's pretend that you were selling. You basically sell your stuff and you say, hey, you don't have to pay me now, customer. You can pay me in 30 days. That's called accounts receivable, right? So other people collectively owe you $101,275. That's an asset on the balance sheet. You own a vehicle. Let's say you own a 2019 Ford van and you purchased it for $29,970. That would be listed. It's what's called book value. The book value is basically what you purchased it for. Okay. So, and again, I'm just keeping this very basic. I did not put accumulated depreciation because I know some of you are like advanced and going to ask. I just didn't put that on there. But what that would mean is if let's say the van had a useful life of like 10 years, I would divide that $29,970, divide it by 10, and I would write that down. Whatever that is, that $2,900 every year for 10 years until basically the vehicle is worth nothing. So that's what accumulated depreciation is. But I did not put that in there just to keep it simple. The real estate warehouse, I purchased it for $275,500. Okay, so the total assets. By the way, if the valuation in the real estate goes up, I do not change that. Right? It's kept there at book value. Sometimes you do what's called marked to market, but I don't really change stuff like that. Doesn't get changed very often. So I'm just saying, like, this is the assets, and you add up the total assets, and they equal $417,095. Okay, so that is everything in the balance sheet. So that's the top part of the assets. The bottom part is the liabilities. So you're looking at the liabilities, and you've got your credit card balance, right? Again, this is the shortest term debt to the longest term debt. You got $34,760. Accounts payable is $37,500. Again, accounts payable is what is owed to others. Like if you had to purchase stuff from a vendor, let's say that you're a contractor and you bought a bunch of wiring and a bunch of lumber, and you owe that lumber yard $37,500. Well, that's where that would go. You owe Wells Fargo for your van loan of $11,570, and you owe Citibank money on the real estate mortgage for $105,350. So the total liabilities is added up to $189,180, and your total equity, which is the assets minus the liabilities, equals $227,915. So that is the balance sheet right there. Okay. Someone is asking Yogeshwari, generally accepted accounting principles is valid in the US, is only valued in USA. It is not. Generally, that's why it's called generally accepted accounting principles. So I'm just letting you know they had to come up with a standard of what different countries were doing, because you got to keep in mind there are so many multinational corporations now. There had to be one reasonable standard that they could follow under GAAP. So GAAP is not just US. GAAP is a standard, and again, I say standard, but it's just generally the rules, the generally accepted accounting principles. They are not hard lines in the sand, but they're generally accepted. So I don't want to say no, it has to be this certain way. I'm just letting you know that there's certain principles that are generally accepted, and that's what GAAP is. So it's not only in the US, it is basically whatever the numeric values are, whether they're dollars, they're Canadian dollars, Australian dollars, or pounds, euros, whatever, they're going to follow this very similar format. So really good question, Yogeshwari. Thank you. So when you're looking at the income statement, so let's move on from balance sheet. So the balance sheet, remember, they're just the balances at periods of time in your company. So again, the snapshot. So if you take a balance sheet in the morning and your people work all day and pay bills and collect in money, your balance sheet at the end of the day will be different. Make sense? So I'm just letting you know it's a snapshot in one moment in time. Let's look at the income statement. You bet, Yogeshwari. So the income statement, again, that is a period of time, but it measures different things. So that measures revenues, which is the sales, the amount of sales. Let's say generally it's over a month, could be over a quarter, could be over a year, right? Whatever. But you generally are going to run these, again, you're going to have the balance sheet that's going to be at the end of the period and the income statement that starts at the beginning and ends at the same time. So generally you have the balance sheet match up to the end. So in other words, let's say it's at the end of December, for example, for the balance sheet. So it'd be 12/31 for the balance sheet. And then you would, if you want to run it for the month, you'd run it from 12/1 to 12/31. So that would be the month of December. Or you run it for the entire year, right? Which would be 1/1 to 12/31. But the balance sheet would always be the balance sheet and the last day of the income statement would generally match. So that's how they match those things up. So the income statement, I get revenues, expenses, and net income. So this is what it's going to look like. Again, I'm going to take myself down so you can see this a little bit easier. So what you're looking at here is, again, the income statement. You got your revenues at top, you got your expenses in the middle, and you got your net income at the bottom. So let's look at the product sales. So you're looking at product sales, service sales, and total sales of 114,000. Why do you think I broke these out between product sales and service sales? Because the margins might be different between product sales and service sales. I would want to know if are my product sales, are they going up? Are they going down? Whatever. And I'm looking at that and I'm measuring. If you see that percentage that's to the right of it, that's called a percentage of sales method. So 75,000 is 65.8% of total sales. So in other words, 75 divided by 114,000 is 65.8. So that way I can check, and as the total sales goes up or down, I can check and see if my product sales is increasing or decreasing based on a total percentage of sales. So you're not just looking at net numbers, you're looking at the percentages. And that right there is money. That is gold. Because if you're trying to figure out product sales went up, but so did total sales. Well, now you have a real metric that you can utilize and start to figure out how you can utilize those numbers. So that's why it's important for you to break those things out. So that's total revenues. Let's look at expenses. Expenses, again, this is what occurred over the period of a month or a year or whatever. Let's just say it's a month though. So your raw materials, and that's what you use to build your widgets, 34,000. Insurance expense of 5,150. So on and so forth. Wages are almost always the highest expense line item for a company. So that's 44,970. And the total expenses of 96,320. And you've got your net income of 17,680. So for that period of a month, right, you have your total revenues of 114,000 minus total expenses of 96,320 equals net income of 17,680. Okay, so that's the income statement. Okay, so you might be thinking, okay, that's great, but what does this mean and what does this matter? What does this have to do with the price of tomatoes? Well, listen, there's a couple of things that I want you to do. So now that you've got this, now you've got the base understanding of the financial statements, okay? And this is really important for you to start to think, okay, well, now I've got this information. What am I going to do with it? So you keep going, you keep rolling on. Now we're going to start thinking, hey, dude, where's all my cash? Because I've heard this all the time that people, I used to make much more money when I was smaller. I used to make much more money before I hired all these people. Yeah, I might have more time, but man, I'm like broke all the time. Okay, so let's talk about growth planning. We're going to talk about a couple different things. But the thing is, about when you're trying to grow your company, you cannot possibly hope to be strategic if you don't know your numbers. So I'm going to give you a couple of key metrics, a couple of really easy metrics for you to figure out. And if you can operate a 4-function calculator, you can do this. It's very simple. A lot of times it's just one math thing. You just got to know where to pull the numbers from and what those numbers actually are representing. So let's look at and this is also going to help you and prevent you from growing broke. So let's look at these 3 key metrics. First of the metrics that I look at is called a profit margin percentage, a profit margin percentage. The other is a cash balance history, and the other one is a cash as a percentage of sales. So let's get into that. So first and foremost, we're going to look at profit margin percentage. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my income statement. Okay, the income statement is the one. Let me take myself down so you can see. The income statement is the one with the revenues, profits, the revenues, expenses, and the net income. Okay, and I'm going to be paying attention to the numbers on the right side of the page. Remember, I brought those up earlier, so we're going to come back to this. So the profit margin percentage, again, remember, the income statement's got $114,000 in total sales. I'm going to be looking at the net income number right down there at the bottom, but it's not looking at the $17,680 I made that month. I'm looking at the profit margin percentage of 15.5%. That means out of every dollar I made, I get to keep 15 cents, 15 and a half cents out of every dollar that I made in sales. That's what that means. So my profit margin percentage is what I want to be paying attention to. So I do not grow broke. Okay, let's take a look at this. Let's pretend that I have this company, and this company has total revenues of $10, and my expenses are $8. So I've got my revenues of 10. Let me take myself down so you can see it a little bit easier. I got my revenues of 10. I've got my expenses of 8, and my net profit is $2 for a net profit margin percentage of 20%. 2 divided by 10 is 20%. Let's remember that. So let's pretend that my expenses go up $1. Let's pretend that my expenses go up $1, but I want to maintain my net profit. So what do? I raise my revenues, I raise my prices $1. Well, this is what happens. I raise my prices $1, so my expenses go up $1 from $8 to $9. My revenues go to $11, right? Because to match that, and I make the same $2. But look what happens to my profit margin percentage. It went down. 2 divided by 11 is 18.2%. Guess what? My business is now less efficient at keeping dollars. That's a problem. That's a big problem. And this right here is one of the main reasons why companies grow broke, because they're raising their money, but they're raising their prices, but they're not raising their prices fast enough. This is the main reason why corporations do exceedingly well during periods of inflation, not hyperinflation, but during periods of inflation, because they maintain their net profit margin percentage, because the gross dollars actually goes up. And I'm going to show you why right now. What happens is, what they should have done, instead of raising your price just $1, you should have raised your price $1.25. Because what that does, if the expenses went up $1 and you raise your pricing $1.25, what that does is it makes your net profit $2.25, but it maintains that profit margin percentage of 20%. Your business is now is operating in the same efficiency as keeping those dollars. This is critical, because what happens if you don't pay attention to this, what happens is your business it's like making less, it's making the same amount of dollars, but those dollars actually are able to buy less things because of inflation. That's why this metric is so important. And if you jump off and you don't like anything else I have to say, this is the thing I want you to remember. Start tracking that net profit margin percentage, and you have to be on that like a freaking Band-Aid. You cannot let up on your profit margin percentage. Making sense? So I'm going to take a sip of water because my mouth's getting dry, but let me know if you've got any questions on this. All right. So we're going to keep rolling. We're almost done. And I want you to think of that net profit margin percentage is one of the things I want you to keep rolling on. So the last piece here is the profit margin percentage, which is what we talked about. We're going to talk about cash balance history and cash as a percentage of sales. Cash balance history. These are one of the things that I see all the time. And this is where you need to track your cash. Most businesses, in fact, almost every single business that I have worked with, they have struggled because they don't have enough cash, especially because they're growing. Why is that a problem? Because when they're growing, they're actually diminishing their cash. And most companies grow so fast that they outgrow their ability to generate cash to fund that growth. So what do? They rely on debt. They rely on credit cards. And the problem with credit cards is not so much the interest rate, but something known as a loan constant. And the loan constant, what that is think of like if you borrowed $1,000 under a regular mortgage versus $1,000 on a credit card, think of the minimum payments that you have to make on that $1,000. On a mortgage, generally in the United States, if you borrow money on $1,000, every $1,000 is about $8 in payment. On a credit card, every $1,000 that you borrow is about $25, $25 to $30 in payment. Do you see the difference? That's the difference in what's called a loan constant. So I'm not going to get into the weeds on that. That is something I cover in the course in greater detail, but that's where you have to start tracking your cash. And I want your cash to be growing. I want your cash. I don't care if it goes up by $1. It better be going up, especially if you're profitable. You need to be stacking your cash. And I'm just telling you, oh, I'm going to lose so much to inflation. Man, you're going to lose way more to taking on bad debt than you ever are to inflation. You can take that to the bank. So this is why I want you to start tracking your cash at the end of each month. Is your cash growing? Is it staying the same, or is it going down? Or is it doing one of these where it's up and down and up and down and up and down? This is why you need to track your cash. The next thing here is also cash as a percentage of sales. This will be the last metric, and then we're gonna land the plane. So what you're gonna do to track your cash as a percentage of sales is to assume you have a monthly operating cycle. And that's generally true for most businesses. So you're going to need two things on this equation. It's very simple. What you're going to do is you're going to go to your balance sheet and you're going to take your cash balance. So let me get myself out of the way so you can see this. All right. So you're going to go to your balance sheet. You're going to get your balance at the end of the month in your checking account. Then you're going to go to the income statement and you're going to pull off the total sales for the month. Okay. So again, for the entire month, you made $114,000 in sales. And you're going to go back to the balance sheet, which again, you're going to pull that number off the balance sheet. So again, you got the balance sheet at the end of the month, the cash balance in your checking account at the end of the month, and you've got your total sales at the end of the month. All you're going to do is divide the two. So you're going to divide 10,000. You're going to divide 10,000 by 114,000 in sales, 10,000 in cash divided by 114,000 in sales to come up with a number of 8.7%. Now, what does that have to do with anything? Well, is that good? Is it bad? Well, to me, I would be a little nervous if I only had 10% of my total sales in cash. To me, that sounds like I don't have near enough. So it's 8.7%. But what am I doing? I'm going to track that. Again, this is the difference between tracking and checking. I'm not just checking on something. I like checking on something is just like, oh, I logged in, I checked it, it's good. Okay, can you tell me what the number was last Wednesday? Or the 3 Wednesdays before that? Can you tell me what the trend is? No, not if you're just checking it. But when you're tracking it is when you're writing it down. So you keep in mind, I'm tracking this on the screen. At the end of January, it was 8.7% of sales. My cash at the end of February was 9.2% of sales. My cash as a percentage of sales in March was 11.3%. So what does that mean? That means one of two things. That means either that's assuming that sales is going up. If sales is going up, that also means that my cash balance is going up. If my sales is going down, that could also mean my cash as a percentage of sales is going up. Does that make sense? So you have to keep in mind there are two numbers that have a symbiotic relationship with one another. So just because the percentage of sales, the cash as a percentage of sales is going up does not mean it's necessarily a good thing. It just means that you have more cash as a percentage of sales. So again, when you have those dips in sales during your normal sales cycle, yeah, your cash might actually look like it's better than it is. But this is also why I'm looking at that other metric as where I'm tracking my cash balance, my raw cash balance, to make sure it's actually going up. Okay, so those two metrics do play on one another. So yes, so it will be available on YouTube. And you will also, if you sign up for it through EventBrite, you will be getting a copy sent to you in your email inbox. So I do apologize. Yeah, I'm going to be wrapping up here in about 5 minutes. So I understand if you have to go though, but thank you for sticking around. So again, getting back to growth planning, you cannot be strategic if you don't know your numbers. And this is also what's going to help you from growing broke. In terms of success strategies, again, you have to know your numbers. You have to track your numbers, and you just have to do both. Okay. You can't wing this. Here's just a fun story. if you see this guy here, he's actually a bank robber, and he's making no attempt at actually disguising himself. And this is interesting because what happened was this guy and another guy, yet an accomplice, was they were robbing banks in Pittsburgh and here in the United States back in the 90s, and they made no attempt to disguise themselves, not at all. Except what they had done was they smeared lemon juice all over their face, and they were so convinced that putting lemon juice on their face was going to make them invisible. Yeah, I'm not kidding. So, of course, they got arrested, and they were like, I don't understand. I had the juice on my face, right? They didn't understand. Well, this had two researchers that were absolutely made of questions, right? You are more than welcome, Nevea. Or Nevea. So, here's, so what these two researchers by the name of Dunning and Kruger, they had done, they really started investigating how false confidence plays a role for many people, especially for business owners, but especially just for people who might be struggling. And everybody starts down here at the bottom where they have very little confidence and they don't know very much. But what happens is they start out and they're like, okay, well, how hard could it be? Right? And they have lots of confidence really early on. But the thing is, they get to the peak of Mount Stupid pretty fast. And this is where they start to realize, they're like, oh man, how hard could it be? All of a sudden becomes, oh my gosh, I don't know what I don't know. And then it comes crashing down. So they have this crisis of confidence. They've learned a little bit, and they wind up in the valley of despair. And this is where a lot of business owners tend to get a little distracted. And because they've had a setback, this is where a lot of times they wander and they start looking at different alternatives. But if they stay with it, if they build their competence, they build and work on their knowledge, they'll start up the slope of enlightenment and eventually get to the plateau of sustainability. And this is why it's important to have a support system. So one of the things we're going to talk about here in just a second is I have a community on School, which is for strategic boardroom. So again, I'm going to make an offer here. If you guys are not interested in anything in any sort of thing like that, you're welcome to hop off. There's really not going to be any new information on here at this point. So just letting you know the lesson's over at this point. But I am just going to take a couple of minutes and tell you about what this advanced money and finance course is. It's going to take everything that we learned today and really wrap it in and take it to the whole other level. So if you're interested, great. If you're not, I promise you you're not going to have, you're not going to hurt my feelings. But this offer that I'm making today only is good for today. Like it has to be like, if you're going to buy it, you have to buy it before midnight. Because I'm going to be putting in a couple of bonuses. So I'm not going to hang on to it. And the reason for that is because I've got some openings in my calendar for one-to-one sessions. And I've got that now. If you come to me tomorrow, I may not have the same opening. That's why I'm making that offer today. So anyway, so what I'm offering here is Advanced Money and Finance course. And in that Advanced Money and Finance course, you're going to get all sorts of different money templates, and you're going to get all sorts of different examples around accounting and finance stuff. Look, I'm not going to try to make you into a bookkeeper. I'm not going to try to make you into an accountant or anything like that. What I want you to do, however, is have an understanding as a business owner. So when someone says to you, hey, can I take a look at your chart of accounts? You understand what that means. If someone says, hey, can I see your general ledger? You know what that means. But you don't need to know debits and credits. You know why? Because you're never going to use that stuff. That's why you'd have a bookkeeper. That's why you'd have a CPA. Or really, if you want to learn that stuff, then you can learn it on your own. But you're not going to get that here because I'm going to treat you as a business owner. I'm going to treat you like a battlefield general. So you can say, oh, this is why I'm putting the tanks on the beach. So you know why the tanks belong there in the first place. Okay. You too, Tanya. Thanks so much. So the thing that I want to have you understand is there's going to be balance sheet examples. There's going to be income statement examples. There's going to be tracking examples. Remember, you talked about tracking in the training. This is going to be all this different stuff here. We're going to talk about underwriting examples, underwriting specifically so you can be bankable. So if you're going to go and borrow money from a bank, you understand how they're going to look at your balance sheet and income statement and why that's going to be relevant to you. So if you're ever hoping to break that cycle of not using your credit cards, your personal credit cards to fund your business, this is going to be really important for you to understand. Also, if you're going to be borrowing money, particularly from a bank, you're going to have a personal financial statement. That personal financial statement is really about listing your own assets, liabilities, and equity of different things. And there's going to be a thing that you can use, and you sign it, print it off and sign it, and that becomes the document that you turn into them. There's also on how to utilize the underwriting, or how to calculate the underwriting when you're buying real estate, specifically what's called a DSCR loan. That's called debt service coverage ratio. Most people, most consumers know DTI, which is debt to income, but DSCR underwriting it's used in many, many commercial banks, and I'm going to show you several underwriting examples for that. So that's going to be important. So again, there's all sorts of videos that walk you through all this different stuff, from different types of expenses, balance sheet, balance tracking template. Like I mentioned, the balance sheet basics, and that's going to be pretty straightforward. The income statement basics. There's going to be borrowing as a business, like I had mentioned, in terms of the financial stuff, in terms of DSCR loans, different types of collateral, revolving lines of credit, term loans, all sorts of things like that. There's going to be term loans for businesses. I'm going to show you how to calculate something called EBITDA. EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And that is what the bankers are going to look at when they're trying to figure out how much money that they can loan you. So that's going to be an important calculation for you to know, but also how to calculate DSCR, how to calculate the debt service coverage ratio. So you know when you're walking in, sitting down in front of the loan officer, you're going to know how they're going to calculate that in advance, or pretty close to it. Most of them use the same formula. I'm also going to talk about FICO scores, particularly in the United States, the Fair Isaac Credit Organization, in terms of how they actually come up with your credit scores. And do you know how many credit scores there are? If you said 3, I understand why you said 3. There's actually a lot more than 3. Now, there are 3 organizations that track, and there's a 4th fringe one that I just learned about. But there's 3, but there's many inside that. There's a bank card score. There are mortgage scores. There's the FICO 5, 4, and 2. There are bank card scores. There are auto scores. There's an unweighted score. That's the free score that you're going to get. So these are all different sorts of scores, and most times people don't understand when they see a score, like, oh, my score is a 700, and you're like, no, it's not. You'll understand why. So the different money templates, like I said, you'll get chart of accounts examples, balance sheet examples, income statement examples, all the different examples that I mentioned earlier. Plus, you're going to learn how to borrow as a business, advanced income statement examples, something called CapEx, which is capital expenditure. So you'll understand how to calculate all of this stuff. And also accounts payable aging, accounts receivable aging, and things like that. So all of this stuff is all of these different courses. So all of this stuff in here there's about, I think there's 18 different videos in total. There's a lot in there for you. And all of that is $37. So here's the thing. You might be thinking, well, why is it $37? Like, that sounds like really low. Here's the reason. If you're struggling financially, the last thing in the world I want you to do is to struggle and not be able to pay this. If you can't afford the 37, you probably have other things to worry about. But here's the thing that I'm going to offer you. I'm also going to give you a full 395-day satisfaction guarantee, and that is, again, just $37. You'd say, why 395 days? Because I wanted to give you a full 30 days to learn all the stuff and an additional year to implement it. And if you think any of it is crap, or you're not going to learn much from it, fine. I'll give you your money back, because I'm telling you, I'm so confident in this course. I had my own inner circle members go through it, and they were like, wow, this is a really good course. And I'm like, okay. And they didn't have to pay anything for it, because they pay me every month to work with them. But I'm just saying, I'm just letting you know that. So there are a couple bonuses that I want you to know about. Is I'm going to give you a 35-minute strategy session, just me, you and me, 1-to-1. But you've got to sign up tonight. If you sign up tomorrow, that goes away. The other thing is, I'm going to give you a free month in the community that I mentioned earlier, which is the school community. And that's, and I'm just going to give you a free month in that, so you can experience it. You can be in, you can learn, you can ask whatever questions you want. And all of that is just $37. But again, like I said, you have to sign up tonight. So that is all I have. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and give you the link to sign up for that. And also, if you guys have any questions, you guys are more than welcome to hang out. And I'll hang out for just a few extra minutes and answer any questions for you guys. So give me just 1 second. Sorry, I meant to have this queued up, but here it is. And that is going to be in the chat right there. So all you got to do, oops. Yep, there we go. So there is the link right there. And you are, if you go ahead and sign up for that right now, you will get all of that stuff. And I will be in touch with you guys so you can, hold on a second. There we go. Oh, sorry, I pasted that twice. All right. So if you guys have any questions, I'm more than welcome. I'm more than happy to hang out. You take that link and go ahead and sign up for that. Otherwise, that's all I have. So I'll hang out just a few more minutes if you guys have any questions. All right. Well, thanks so very much. Good to see you. Good to see you, John. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Okay. Damon, you are more than welcome. Thanks for hanging out. Yogeshwari, thank you. You have a great weekend as well. Tanya, thanks so much. Okay. Kara, excellent. Nevia, it has been my pleasure. Okay. All right, everybody. That is everything. Bernadine, thanks so very much. I am more than happy to hang around. Again, it was truly my pleasure to do this for you guys. Thanks so much. And again, I'll see you guys in the boardroom. Take good care.